Today we're making bangers and mash. As you can see in front of you, the ingredients that you would need. For the most part, you need good sausages, some good potatoes, and good stock. Although to be fair, I did buy mine from Woolies. So with the onions, you want to cut it along the grain. So when you cut the top and the bottom off, make sure the knife follows in that direction. Cut it nice and thin so that it caramelizes quicker. Now when cutting your onions, you want a really sharp knife. The sharper your knife, the less likely you'll cry. The onion releases its own defense mechanism, and a lot more blunt your knife, the more you crush the cells and more you release the crying part. So keep that in mind. So you want to finally chop some garlic up. You want to cut the ends off the green beans. Make sure you wash them, Regarding the rosemary, just pull all the leaves off just like you see. And just cut it up nice and fine, put it in a bowl. Make sure you cut up some butter up into even sizes beforehand. It'd be easier to measure how much you put in the mash. Additionally, you should also, when you peel the potatoes, after you peel them, you want to cut them into reasonable large chunks. I cut most of mine into 8s, but sometimes they're bigger. But make sure they're even sized so they cook evenly. Cook your potatoes in cold water. Don't just start putting your potatoes in once the water's boiling. Make sure it's cold and salted quite generously as well. Now, get your pan nice and hot, medium-high heat. Put some oil on it so that it doesn't stick. That's if you've got a stainless steel pan. Now, when you place your sausages down, it should sound just like what you're hearing. If not, then it's not hot enough. Make sure it is. Make sure you poke your natural casing sausages, otherwise they explode and go bang. Therefore, you get the term. Water in it, just a little bit in the pan of sausages so that they can steam in their own heat. Put a lid on it. It'll help cook more evenly and a bit quicker as well. You can see, flipping the sausages, it's slightly cracked. It's because I didn't poke them properly, but they've got a nice brown color on it. They should be mostly cooked through with the steam after a little bit. Now you just want to add a bit of color to it. And I'm just futilely poking holes in it with a fork at this point. After a certain point, once they're pretty nice and brown all around, just give them a test. Pick one out, cut it open. If it's raw in the middle, pink in the middle, keep cooking it. Otherwise, it's all good. Test if the potatoes are cooked. You twist the fork with a potato stabbed into it. It should crumble pretty easily. It should be nice and tender. If not, just keep cooking it. But otherwise, strain the potatoes afterwards. Make sure you keep your sausages in the oven, because if you have limited space, you won't be able to cook all of this at once. So you want to keep them nice and warm. Now, I'm going to start doing the gravy. Firstly, you want to caramelize the chopped onions so they become nice and thick and dark brown, using a bit of butter and salt and pepper. Now here, I'm going to be a little bit fancy and put a little scotch in my onions and then flambe it. That was a bit rough, but it was good fun. It's good fun. You should give it a try. Just make sure your fire alarm doesn't go off. Now with the rosemary that you probably took from the street, somewhere just growing randomly, put that with the onions after you have flambéed it. And then afterwards, I'm going to have you put the caramelized onions in a separate bowl, put it aside, so that we can make the roux for the gravy. When making the roux, what's important is that you put some butter in the pan. To get to this point, you just need to make sure you stir the flour and the butter together properly so that it doesn't burn or become too clumpy. You want it to be sort of like a thick sort of liquid that's on the bottom of a pan. And the hotter you make it and the longer you do it for, the quicker it becomes browner and the more darker it gets. Now we're going to add the onions back in once we've made a roux of that color, or slowly add back the beef stock. Then that way we can slowly make the gravy. Now the point of the roux is to thicken the gravy so that it becomes nice and sticky and oozy like you want it. Beef stock slowly, bit by bit. I understand it's beef stock and a pork sausage, but you do you. I figured beef stock is better than chicken stock. Remember, it's easier to buy the stock. Although it's not as good, it's easier to buy it than it is to make it yourself. Let that reduce so that it becomes like a nice thick gravy from a salt to taste. eat a little sausage, you know what I mean? Oh, this sucks bollock. I'm just gonna use a spoon. Now, with the mash, you don't actually need a sieve, although that does provide a more smoother consistency with your mash. Just a mashing device is plenty. You don't need anything else. Now, this does take a little bit of time, and whilst I was doing it, it did make the potatoes a bit too cold, so I had to return it to the stove. Now, add butter to your mashed potato. I preferably don't finger the butter, you know, use a spoon or a fork or even a knife. It was about 100 grams of butter. Now, when I returned it back to the stove, make sure to add hot milk, not cold. About a cup is enough, maybe less, for the amount of potatoes that you have. It'll make it a bit more smoother, tastier. Now, I felt it a little bit fancy, so you can add, you know, cheese to it if you wanted to. Just get a nice strong flavored cheese. Even if you wanted garlic as well. If you had the, you know, little extra dollar bills, you can make truffle mash. It's up to you. Now for the beans. Melt some butter in a pan. I think I was a little bit too hot there, but then add the garlic. Now, because it's too hot, the garlic, you know, browned a little bit too much. Might be a little bit bitter otherwise. Now, when you add the beans and you want to make it nice and hot, well, of course, there should be plenty of oil. I should have used more butter. Now, saute that, sort of, you know, give it that, you know, little stir, that sort of thing. Makes it all cooked evenly. Season it, salt and pepper, you know, how you like it. I'm not actually good at the plating up. It's like arguably the worst thing.
That's okay.
Let's just go with 2. I don't know what to do with this. Because when you get to the plating aspect of it, things become a little bit tricky for me. But as you can see, I tried mash first, then the beans, then sausages, and then gravy to finish it off with a bit of parsley to garnish. If you wanted to copy this, that'd be nice to know that people like it.